I am Jessica Quillen, and welcome to Fashion Strategy Weekly Conversations. I'm very pleased to be joined today by Clare Tattersall from Digital Fashion Week New York. And just to kick things off, Clare, I would love for you just to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Digital Fashion Week New York and your background and kind of how you got started with everything.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Clare Tattersall. I'm the founder and director of Digital Fashion Week. We're in New York. Last in 2023, we were in London and Paris, and we're adding Milan to the lineup as well. So super exciting. We've been in the metaverse. We're not in the metaverse for the first time this season. But we're really looking at casting a lens on the future of fashion. So bringing together the three pillars of thought leadership, innovation, and creativity, and creating immersive events around these pillars.
Oh, that's amazing. And sort of what inspired you to create Digital Fashion Week? What sort of gaps did you feel there were in terms of just fashion and sort of, the way the industry was sort of focusing on its own sort of inevitable digital future, if you will?
Yeah, so let me actually go back to 2009 when I started my previous company, Thunder Lily. So it's a vertical virtual design platform. Our goal was sketch to launch in 24 hours at zero cost. So demystifying each step of the design process and digitalizing it. So that sounds like really an old concept now, and it is, because that was 2009. I also have a history in robotic fashion, etc., making wearable technology. So for a long time, I've been curating the tech night of fashion shows. And it was during lockdown and being asked to do this for Fashion Week Brooklyn and trying to do it in a way that we were using technology to exhibit technology. So I've created these like really simple virtual showrooms, sort of like virtual galleries, and with technology and wearable technology and digital fashion. And we just had so many visitors, and I realized like now is the time that people are actually finally interested. And I really wanted to put technology and fashion together in the same place. So technology is shown in this glitzy glam environment as well. And again, that sounds like a dated theory because that's 4 or 5 years ago, and it's really grown, and it's just bringing together a great community and really addressing issues. So you asked about what was the issue that I was addressing. So it was really having a place where we could look at technology and understand technology in the context of how we experience fashion. So really putting it on the runway, putting it as an exhibit. We can try things out, we can see what it is and understand it. It should not be in the background. It's very much part of our experiences. So trying to create that environment.
No, I love that. And I just do want to talk a little bit about sort of obviously the next Digital Fashion Week is coming up next week in New York from the 8th to the 9th. And I'd love you just to talk a little bit more in detail about sort of the various parts of the presentation you have for the live event and any digital streaming you have, because I know there's obviously the runway portion, there are, presentations and the symposium part of that. So if you want to just talk a little more deeply about what the actual physical event were and any sort of remote opportunities for people to sort of tune in who aren't in New York.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm really excited to have you, Jessica, on the stage on the first day of February the 8th as a speaker. And what you bring really sort of exemplifies what we're looking for. We are very much focusing on content, strategy, and tactics. So I think in the past few years, fashion we've been looking at the hype, and we've been looking very conceptually. And now it's time to really focus on the nuts and bolts and the whys and the hows. So looking at building a strategy, which you're an expert in, and what are the tactics for rolling that out? Why do we need to do this? What is our brand? What are the brand choices that we're making? So we've gone from large conceptual panels down to solo talks or fireside chats to really zone in and provide nuggets of information. So that's day one, and we're partnering it with these exhibits as well. So we've got some cutting edge innovators that they're bringing their exhibits to the location, which is FIT. They're very graciously hosting us. And so you can try out these different technologies, and you can hear speak on the stage and really have this sort of full understanding of choices that you can make as a brand, as a retailer. Innovators can meet and talk together, and that's a huge thing that comes out of Digital Fashion Week. It's not just about coming and listening, it's about making new partnerships, finding people that maybe you want to work with, or you want to learn from, or you want to share with as well. So we have a day of that really focused on thought leadership and experiences. And then on February 9th, we have really an exciting phygital runway show. So we have several elements to this. The first is DJ Dex. She's a virtual human. She's trained on AI. We had a competition for digital designers, and we selected 7 of the best designs that would work on DJ Dex. And so while Dex is playing, she's also going to be wearing these different outfits and rotating through them. And one of the reasons for doing this, not only because Dex is fabulous, but also it really shows an interesting use case scenario for fashion and what we can do. We very much know about gaming, and gaming is a big focus of 2024 as well, of course. But there are other uses, and Dex is a great use of fashion. And then we have the phygital runway show, and we have 4 designers. We have designers from Africa, from Austria, from Spain and Ukraine, and from right here in New York as well. So an amazing, really interesting, eclectic group of designers who are showcasing their digital assets as well as their physical assets. And each brand is different. They bring different digital elements to the conversation because, as you know, as a brand strategist, then they're really looking at what is their individual vision and what's meaningful for them and the choices they make. And then our grand finale it's the first time this has ever been done. We're working with Future Front Row and creating a live motion capture hologram. So they have the hologram runway show to great media attention in September in Amsterdam. So we're recreating elements with new designers of this, but we're adding in live motion capture. So we have Lindsay Miller, who's a beautiful local ballet dancer, and she will be dancing and performing. And so the runway will be mirroring her movements as well. So it's going to be really exciting. And then the audience, after the performance, the audience are going to have the opportunity to try that themselves with the motion capture. And they'll be directing the runway show. And that's something that I think is really interesting. What is the audience and how they're directing fashion?
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. Because, you and I have discussed in the past sort of the value of things like content co-creation, and to be able to do that live, that's really incredible. So I look forward to seeing that unfold. And actually, how will people be able to find how can people sign up for your event if they're local and want to go? And then if they're, remote, how do they sort of find out kind of more information, both about the designers, but also if there's a ability to tune in live as well?
Right. So I guess our website is the easiest name to remember. And so a great link. So digitalfashionweek.nyc, that's our home base. And then you can find links to the tickets from the homepage there. We do everything all our ticket sales are on Luma. And so, we've got tickets for each different event and anybody can register there. But links directly from our homepage are the best.
I know, I love that. That's wonderful. So I'm very excited to see how that all goes. And, how are the events that are going to be happening in London, Paris, and Milan, building on that? How are they different? I'm just very curious to understand more about.
They're
going to be?
totally different. So we're skipping London for February. Hope to be back there September. After New York, we're going to Paris. So the first thing is our runway show. NFT Paris invited us to host our runway show at their event, which is super exciting. It's in partnership with Sandbox. So the digital aspects are all about Sandbox. Sandbox is a great partner for us because they're a creator community and they're really focused on how designers can create revenue streams for themselves as well as creating as well. So it's just really an amazing partnership, and they're a lovely team to work with. So that's all great points. So that's the Digital Runway show. And then on February the 26th, Sandbox is hosting us in their headquarters in Paris for the symposium. So we have talks, we have exhibits. So there are some really interesting virtual try-ons, and there's a lot of sort of digital assets being exhibited, a lot of interesting sort of new ideas, different forms of holograms that we're breaking out there as well, with different kinds of hologram displays, much smaller than the big hologram show. And again, like really doing a deep dive into what is the journey for a designer or a brand? What is the value that they can find through the digitalization of their brand? Everything from concept to consumer. And there are many different paths. So it's really exploring those and having a taste. Or the exhibits are sort of like a tasting menu. You get to try things out. And then right at the end of the month, February 29th, we're in Milan at beautiful Nolo factory. So we have this lovely just infinity stage there where we can experiment with some visual ideas. We'll have the runway show, talks, and there's a see-through LED wall as well. So creating another sort of almost holographic experience. It's not a hologram for sure, but very much like that kind of tangible, intangible experience. And it's on Leap Day. So we're really looking at, it fits perfectly with digital fashion. It exists and it doesn't exist at the same time. It's here and then it's gone. It's once every 4 years.
No, I love that. That's amazing. And I guess that pulls me back to my next question for you is just, from your perspective, because you get to take both a wide and I would say a narrow lens on digital fashion, what are the opportunities and challenges for digital fashion for, brands specifically? Because I know a lot of brands sort of attend presentations. They're always sort of interested in, testing out new technologies. And, I think for many people, the use cases are still sort of a little far off. So I would love to hear from your perspective on sort of what are sort of near-term opportunities, what are sort of the challenges of long-term, and how do you sort of bridge that gap? I know I'll be talking a little more about that next week in terms of bridging Web 2 to Web 3, but I'd love to hear from your perspective just because you have such a depth of experience and knowledge when it comes to that.
Well, I'm going to leave the conversation on bridging entirely to you, Jessica, because you are an expert there. But so, from my point of view, the way I see the industry at the moment, it's very varied between small independent brands and very large household names and luxury brands. And then again, you've got retailers as well. These are all very, very different conversations to be had. I think in the past few years, we've seen shiny objects that we want to jump on and grab, and they look amazing. And I think people are really starting now to think, what is the value to my brand of that? And I think that is probably the biggest challenge, both for independents and for very large brands as well. Looking at what is the real value, what is the short-term value, and what is the long-term value. I know a lot of brands are really struggling with investment in this area. Or one of the things that they're struggling with can be investment in this area, and looking at what is the short-term return on investment and what is the real long-term. I do feel very much that large brands, could be making more effort towards innovation for themselves. Again, this is their choice to make, not my choice, but I do think investing in innovation, in trying things out, will help us get to the next stage. If I just sort of make a comparison to hybrid cars and then electric cars, and hybrids were very costly really for the environment. Having the battery in a hybrid car is the equivalent to driving 100,000 miles. So you're not, as a driver, going to get an immediate sort of return on your investment in the environment. But how has that then taken us through that process into electric cars, and how things can be much better in the long term for the environment? So I hope that's not too much of a sort of a clunky analogy, but it really helps me to understand how sometimes we make short-term decisions that we have to look at what is this step, what is the value, A, to us, and B, to the industry as a whole. And everybody benefits when the industry as a whole can move forward as well. So that's sort of a bit of a rambling answer to your question, but I don't think there is any one thing that we can really pinpoint.
No, and I love that. I mean, look, I know next week I'm gonna be talking to Nitin Kumar from the F Word, who comes from sort of the very, I would say, practical kind of enterprise infrastructure side of the metaverse and these immersive technologies, and he's really looking for sort of that bridge between sort of a brand's tech stack where it is and sort of these future immersive experiences. And from my lens as one of the very few content strategists I know within fashion and luxury, for us, it's very much, it's a working title about really how do you make that strategic, I would say, framework, as well as a roadmap that's going to take you from A to Z when it comes to innovation in sort of an overall kind of holistic kind of approach to your content across platforms, right? It's not enough to have a content marketing strategy just limited to each social media channel, as a lot of brands do. It's really thinking overarching, how are these things linked together? How do customers travel from one touch point to another? And I think the argument for digital fashion, when you start to look at it through that more sort of connected lens, starts to build, because you have practical technologies right now like AR, VR that are becoming foundational to even just how e-commerce is happening within a shopping page, and you just start to extend that into sort of more immersive experiences, and you sort of see that model start to build out. So I loved the analogy between the hybrid cars and the electric cars, because I think it sort of shows where we move from that hype cycle kind of, upward excitement of the past few years. With obviously, people talk a lot about the metaverse being dead. And in fact, I think now, as you say, it's pulling back and really focusing on, strategic priorities for brands and really figuring out how to tailor those, but also what sort of, I talk with brands a lot about basic things, really boring things like content operations and infrastructure, and really how to build those linkages between, people, processes, and technology. And it's from building that sort of corporate structure that I think you get those longer term, innovations becoming scalable and, sustainable over time. So I love that. And I just had one more quick question, and I think because I love your sort of energy and knowledge for everything. I would love, just in your head, kind of what do you think the future of fashion will look like, and sort of what role do these digital technologies play in sort of how people both design fashion, but also on the consumer experience side? Like, how do you see the shopping experience evolving and looking in the future?
Well, I'm going to sort of answer that slightly tangentially, because I think what the foundation that everybody should have at the basis of any decision that they make really is the future of our planet. I think it's a major concern. I think digital fashion can provide a lot of solutions and more questions about this as well. So I'm really excited about how we use augmented reality, which you mentioned before, and I think is an absolute no-brainer for so many people to be able to see things in 3D, to be able to see things in augmented reality. You know, how can we see everything in our environment, and how this reflects on reducing the inventory, how these things, for example, can lead finally to on-demand manufacturing. How can we produce less waste? How can we produce better working environments as well? These are really, really relevant outcomes that we can look towards that are, you know, much longer term or sort of further from our choices. When we go shopping, where we shop, you know, how does this affect people who are in the factories making things, how much inventory the stores have, how much that affects prices? You know, you look at the markup on anything, really in fashion, it's a 55% markup, which means that 55% of any items that are sold usually in retail, then that's to account for losses. It's not just profit in there. So these margins can be reduced. So I think the digitalization of the industry, how can we make things smoother, easier, more engaging? Fashion is about storytelling as well. So how do the consumers become more of the storytellers in this as well? And I think that's a big part of what you're doing as well, working with brands to look at how they engage the consumers and make them a stronger part of all their decisions. So yes, there are so many things that I'm really excited about, but it's how we make the world a better place at the end of the day, I think, that are true values that we can bring.
I love that. Thank you so much for your time, Claire. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. And yes, I look forward to next week's events kicking off.
I look forward to seeing you there as well. Thank you so much, Jessica.